The cruel capture. Lily Hart stood at the edge of the observation deck aboard the Nova Dawn, marveling at the stars that stretched endlessly in every direction. As a junior xenobiologist, this research mission was her dream come true. She had spent years studying alien ecosystems, hoping to prove humanity's place as both explorers and allies in the vast galactic community. The hum of the ship's engines was a soothing reminder of safety as she carefully logged her findings on a crystalline data tablet. "Lily, you're going to miss the stellar bloom if you keep staring at your notes," teased Dr. Karim, her mentor. He gestured toward the viewport where shimmering trails of gas swirled, illuminated by a nearby nebula. "Moments like this are why we're out here." Smiling, Lily tucked her tablet under her arm and joined him. She was about to comment on the breathtaking display when the ship shuddered violently, sending her and Dr. Karim sprawling to the floor. Alarms blared as the room's lighting flickered, plunging into an eerie red glow. "Attack. Out here." Lily gasped, struggling to regain her footing. Dr. Karim looked just as stunned. Before either could move, the viewport darkened as an enormous shadow loomed over the Nova Dawn. A Krelax warship. Lily's heart sank. The Krelax were infamous, an expansionist, predatory race that saw themselves as superior to all others. Diplomacy had failed countless times. Their arrival here, in uncharted space, meant one thing: they had been hunting. Metal groaned as the Nova Dawn was pulled into the Krelax vessel's docking bay. Crew members shouted orders, but it was futile. The Nova Dawn was a science vessel, unarmed and ill-equipped for any sort of conflict. Lily's stomach churned as the ship lurched to a halt, trapped like an insect in a web. "Hart, stay behind me," Dr. Karim said, his voice trembling. He grabbed a nearby tool as an improvised weapon, though it was clear he knew it wouldn't make a difference. The sound of hissing air preceded the breach. The doors of the observation deck were ripped apart as Krelax soldiers stormed in. Towering and armored, they radiated an aura of cruelty. Their four glowing eyes scanned the room with a cold precision, their clawed hands gripping sleek energy weapons. "Humans," one of them sneered, the translator embedded in its throat distorting its guttural voice. "So fragile. So amusing." Dr. Karim stepped forward, trying to shield Lily. "We are scientists. Unarmed. You have no reason to harm us." The Krelax commander chuckled, a sound that sent chills through the room. "Harm? No, not harm. Study. Experiment." With a flick of his wrist, he ordered his soldiers to seize the humans. Lily screamed as one of them grabbed her arm, its grip like iron. She struggled, but it was useless. Around her, other crew members were being dragged away. Dr. Karim lunged at the nearest Krelax, but he was swatted aside with ease, his body hitting the wall with a sickening thud. "Leave him alone," Lily shouted, her voice breaking. Her captor tightened its grip, pulling her toward the docking tunnel. She looked back at Dr. Karim, unconscious on the floor, and felt a surge of helpless rage. "You can't do this to us," she cried, but the Krelax didn't even acknowledge her words. The docking tunnel was dark and cold, the air thick with the scent of machinery and something foul. Lily was forced into a cell aboard the Krelax ship, its walls pulsating with a faint organic glow. She collapsed onto the floor, her body trembling. The door sealed shut, leaving her in suffocating silence. For hours, or perhaps days, she couldn't tell. Lily was left alone. The cell was barren except for a hard bench. Her mind raced, replaying the attack over and over. She thought of her family, of Earth, and of the crew she had just lost. Was she the only one left alive? What would the Krelax do to her? The silence was broken by the distant sound of screams. They echoed through the corridors, faint but unmistakable. Her breath quickened as the reality of her situation sank in. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was prey. Lily forced herself to focus. She examined her cell, noting the faint seams where the walls connected. She tugged at the bench, testing its strength. If she was going to survive, she couldn't afford to break down. The Krelax might see humans as weak, but she would prove them wrong. Hours later, the door to her cell opened, flooding the room with harsh light. A Krelax soldier stood there, its expression unreadable. It pointed a clawed finger at her. "Your turn," it growled. Lily's pulse raced, but she forced herself to stand tall. As she was dragged down the corridor, she whispered under her breath, her voice steady and cold. "You've made a mistake. You'll see what humans can do." Shadows of resistance. Earth was no stranger to adversity. Humanity had endured countless challenges, wars, disasters, and near extinction, but nothing compared to the threat posed by the Krelax. Their cruelty was legendary, and their technology far surpassed anything Earth had ever encountered. Yet the resilience of the human spirit had always been its most formidable weapon. Commander Eva Hart stared at the holographic screen in the dimly lit war room, her jaw clenched tightly. The image of her sister, Lily, smiled back at her from a crew photo taken aboard the Nova Dawn. The cheerful scene was a stark contrast to the grim reality Eva now faced. "Lily's beacon went dark near this sector," said Lieutenant Marcus, pointing to a map of Krelax-controlled space. "It's deep in enemy territory, Commander. No known human vessels have ever ventured that far." Eva's icy blue eyes scanned the map, her mind racing. The Krelax were known to abduct humans, but for what purpose? The question haunted her. "We can't let this go unanswered," she said firmly. "If the Krelax think they can take one of ours without consequence, they're gravely mistaken." Marcus hesitated. "With all due respect, Commander, this is a suicide mission. The Krelax don't just have superior numbers, they have surveillance systems that can detect even our best cloaking technology." Eva's voice was cold and unwavering. "If they've harmed her, there will be no corner of the galaxy where they can hide." The room fell silent as the team absorbed her words. They knew Eva wasn't just talking about her sister. This was about humanity's pride, its refusal to be subjugated by a race that saw them as mere playthings. Eva turned to her team. "We're not going in blind. We've developed stealth systems they haven't seen yet, and we'll use every dirty trick in the book to get our people out. Prep the Phantom Wing for launch." The Phantom Wing, Earth's most advanced stealth ship, had been developed for missions exactly like this. Dangerous, covered, and against impossible odds. Its cloaking technology rendered it nearly invisible to most scanners, and its weaponry was designed to strike hard and fast. Meanwhile, aboard the Krelax warship, Lily's resolve was being tested. She sat in her cell, her body aching from hours of confinement. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of fear and determination. She knew she couldn't wait for rescue. If humanity's response came too late, she might not survive. The Krelax hadn't been subtle about their intentions. Through snippets of overheard conversations, Lily pieced together a horrifying truth. She was being studied to determine humanity's breaking point. They intended to use the knowledge to launch a full-scale invasion of Earth, exploiting what they saw as human weakness. Her cell door hissed open, and a Krelax guard loomed in the doorway. "Move," it growled, its voice a guttural snarl. Lily's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain calm. As she was marched through the labyrinthine corridors of the warship, she made mental notes: ventilation shafts, security panels, anything that could be useful. She passed other cells, where alien prisoners from countless species huddled in despair. Her stomach churned at the sight, but she pushed the emotion aside. Survival required focus. The guard brought her to a dimly lit chamber, where a Krelax officer awaited. The officer's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and its smile was cold and calculating. "Ah, the human," it said, circling her like a predator sizing up its prey. "You're resilient, intriguing." Lily didn't respond, her silence a small act of defiance. The officer leaned closer, its claws tapping against the metal table between them. "Do you know why you're here, little one?" She met its gaze, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Because you're afraid of us." The officer laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "Afraid? No, curious. Your kind is weak, yet you cling to life with such stubbornness. We will learn everything about you, and when we do, Earth will fall." Lily's fists clenched. She had no weapons, no resources, and no backup. But she had something the Krelax didn't understand. "We're not as weak as you think," she said quietly. The officer's expression darkened. "We'll see." Back on Earth, Eva's team was preparing for the mission. The Phantom Wing was loaded with supplies, and the crew reviewed their infiltration plan. Eva stood at the helm, her mind consumed by thoughts of her sister. Marcus approached, holding a datapad. "Commander, we've intercepted fragments of Krelax communications. It's not much, but it confirms they have human prisoners." Eva's grip tightened on the railing. "Then we have no time to waste." As the Phantom Wing lifted off, its cloaking system engaging seamlessly, Eva stared out into the void. Her voice was steady but laced with determination. "Hold on, Lily. We're coming for you." Unbeknownst to Eva, Lily had overheard a critical piece of information during her time in the Krelax chambers. The aliens weren't just planning an invasion. They were already building weapons of mass destruction, hidden deep in their strongholds. If Earth didn't act fast, the consequences would be catastrophic. The escape plan. Lily sat in the cold, dimly lit corner of her cell, her mind racing. The faint hum of the Krelax warship's engines vibrated through the metal walls, but the screams of other prisoners were far louder in her ears. She forced herself to focus, blocking out the terror. The Krelax wanted to see her break, but they underestimated her determination. She wasn't alone anymore. In the cell adjacent to hers, an alien prisoner named Tover whispered through a small vent connecting their cells. Tover was a member of the Zarnak, a species once enslaved by the Krelax before their rebellion was crushed. His voice, gravelly and tinged with bitterness, carried a strange mix of hope and despair. "They think they're invincible," Tover said, his voice barely audible. "But they don't know you, do they? I've never seen anyone defy them the way you do." "I can't do this alone," Lily replied, her voice equally quiet. "We need to find a way out." Tover hesitated. "You're human. Your kind is known for their cleverness and their recklessness. If you have a plan, I'll follow it." Lily leaned closer to the vent. "The guards are arrogant. They don't expect resistance. I've been watching their patrols. There's a pattern. Every 15 minutes, the corridor outside our cells is unguarded for about 30 seconds. "And what do you plan to do in 30 seconds? Tover asked skeptically. "Find a weakness," she replied firmly. "Every system has one." Meanwhile, aboard the Phantom Wing, Eva's team was closing in on the Krelax warship. The tension was palpable as the crew worked silently, reviewing maps and monitoring enemy movements. Lieutenant Marcus approached Eva, who was staring intently at the holographic display of the ship's interior. "Commander, we've identified possible weak points in their defenses," Marcus said. "But there's one problem. Their main power cord is shielded by a defense grid we've never encountered before. If we're detected, we won't survive long." Eva's jaw tightened. "Then we won't get detected. We'll stick to the shadows and strike when they least expect it." She tapped the display, marking an entry point. "This is where we'll infiltrate. Once inside, we split into 2 teams. Team 1 will locate the prisoners and secure their escape. Team 2 will plant explosives on the ship's critical systems. If the Krelax want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Back on the Krelax ship, Lily's plan was taking shape. She and Tover waited for the next patrol window, the seconds stretching endlessly as the guards' footsteps faded. Lily used a small piece of metal she had pried from the bench in her cell to manipulate the door's locking mechanism. Her hands trembled as she worked, but she refused to let fear slow her down. "Almost. Got it," she muttered, her heart pounding. With a soft click, The door slid open just enough for her to slip through. Tover watched through the vent, his eyes wide. "You did it. Stay quiet," Lily whispered, motioning for him to follow. She worked on his cell door, and within moments, he was free. The two crept down the corridor, their steps silent on the cold metal floor. Lily's earlier observations paid off. They avoided several guards by slipping into maintenance tunnels and unused storage rooms. Along the way, they stumbled upon a control panel displaying the ship's layout. Lily quickly memorized the path to the armory. "We need weapons," she said, her voice steady. "If we can arm the other prisoners, we might stand a chance." Tover hesitated. "You're talking about starting a revolt." "I'm talking about survival," Lily shot back. "If we wait for rescue, we'll die here. The only way out is to fight." As Lily and Tover moved toward the armory, Eva's team infiltrated the ship. The Phantom Wing's cloaking technology had allowed them to dock undetected, but the mission was far from over. Eva and Marcus led Team 1 through the lower decks, their movements precise and silent. They came across a security checkpoint where a lone Krelax soldier stood guard. Eva signaled to Marcus, who crept forward and incapacitated the guard with a silenced energy blade. The team moved quickly, disabling cameras and marking their path with hidden beacons for their escape route. Eva's comm buzzed softly. "Team 2 to Commander," came a voice. "We've located the power core. Preparing to plant charges." "Understood," Eva replied. "Stay on schedule. We need to hit them hard and fast." Lily and Tover finally reached the armory, their breath ragged from the effort. The room was guarded by 2 Krelax soldiers, their glowing eyes scanning the corridor. "We can't take them head-on," Tover whispered. "We won't have to," Lily said, holding up a small device she had snatched from the control panel earlier, a power surge module. She quickly rigged it to overload, creating a loud explosion down the hall. The guards rushed toward the noise, leaving the armory unprotected. Lily and Tover slipped inside, grabbing weapons and communication devices. Tover grinned as he armed himself. "You're full of surprises, human." Lily handed him a blaster. "Let's make this count." As Lily and Tover prepared to free the other prisoners, Eva's team encountered unexpected resistance. A patrol of Krelax soldiers had discovered their presence. The sound of gunfire echoed through the ship, and Lily froze as the alarms blared. Their window of escape was rapidly closing, and the fate of everyone aboard now hung by a thread. The shadows arrive. The screech of alarms echoed through the Krelax warship, painting the once silent halls in chaos. Red warning lights flashed against the cold metallic walls, casting shadows that danced like phantoms. Lily and Tover pressed themselves against a bulkhead, gripping stolen blasters tightly. "They know we're loose," Tover whispered, his voice tight with fear. "Good," Lily replied, her eyes blazing with determination. "It'll keep them distracted." As the alarms blared, the ship's guards mobilized, searching for the escaped prisoners. Lily and Tover moved quickly, using maintenance tunnels and shadowed corridors to avoid detection. Their destination was clear: the detention block, where hundreds of other prisoners awaited a fate worse than death. If they could rally the captives, they could overwhelm the Krelax forces. Tover glanced at Lily as they moved. "You really think we can do this?" "We don't have a choice," Lily said. "If we don't fight back, we're all as good as dead." At the same time, Eva and her team were deep within the Krelax ship, navigating the labyrinth of corridors with practiced precision. The Phantom Wing's cloaking tech had done its job, allowing them to dock unnoticed, but stealth alone wouldn't win this fight. Lieutenant Marcus led the way, his weapon drawn and his gaze sharp. "Commander, we're closing in on the detention block," he said softly, his voice barely audible through the comlink. Eva's grip on her blaster tightened. "Good. Stay alert. The Krelax don't leave their prisoners unguarded." The team moved silently, disabling cameras and bypassing security checkpoints. They encountered a pair of Krelax soldiers and dispatched them quickly, their movements swift and lethal. Eva's mind raced with thoughts of Lily. She had to be alive. She had to be. Team 2 to Commander. A voice crackled through the comm. Charges are set on the power core, ready to detonate on your signal. Hold position, Eva replied. We're not leaving without the prisoners. Back in the detention block, Lily and Tover reached the central holding area. The sight was staggering. Rows upon rows of cells filled with prisoners from countless species. Some were slumped in despair, while others stared blankly, their spirits broken by the Krelax's cruelty. We'll need to work fast, Tover said, scanning the control panel that operated the cells. Can you hack it? Lily asked, her voice urgent. Tover nodded. Give me a minute. Lily kept watch as Tover worked, her blaster trained on the corridor. She could hear the distant sound of Krelax soldiers closing in, their guttural shouts growing louder. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. Tover cursed under his breath as sparks flew from the panel. It's more complex than I thought. Lily's eyes darted toward the corridor. We don't have time. Hurry. Finally, the cells hissed open, and the prisoners hesitated, their eyes wide with disbelief. Lily stepped forward, her voice firm. We're getting out of here. Arm yourselves with whatever you can find, and be ready to fight. A few prisoners scrambled for weapons, but many remained frozen, their fear paralyzing them. Tover raised his voice. Listen to her. This is your only chance. If you want to live, fight. The urgency in his words snapped some of them into action. They armed themselves with scavenged tools, makeshift weapons, and sheer determination. The tide was beginning to turn. Meanwhile, Eva's team reached the detention block, their weapons raised as they cleared the area. They rounded a corner and froze as they came face to face with Lily, Tover, and the growing crowd of armed prisoners. Lily, Eva breathed, lowering her weapon. Relief and determination flooded her features. Eva. Lily's voice cracked with emotion, but she quickly regained her composure. You found me. Always, Eva replied, stepping forward. But we don't have time for reunions. The Krelax are mobilizing. We need to move now. Lily nodded, glancing at the prisoners. We're ready. What's the plan? Escape first, destroy them second, Eva said. She turned to Marcus. Signal Team 2. Detonate the charges on my command. As the group began moving toward the ship's docking bay, the Krelax launched their counterattack. Soldiers swarmed the corridors, their energy weapons blazing. The prisoners fought back with newfound courage, emboldened by Lily and Tover's leadership. Eva's team provided covering fire, their precision strikes cutting through the Krelax forces. The narrow corridors turned into battlegrounds, the clash of weapons echoing through the ship. Lily fought alongside the others, her heart pounding with adrenaline. For every step they gained, the Krelax pushed back harder. It was a desperate struggle, but humanity and its allies refused to falter. Just as the group reached the docking bay, a massive Krelax warship loomed outside the hangar, its weapons primed and ready. The prisoners froze in fear as the ship's commander appeared on a holographic screen, his voice a cold snarl. You think you can escape? You will die here, every last one of you. Eva exchanged a grim look with Lily. We've come too far to stop now. Ready the charges. As the Krelax warship powered its weapons, the clock began ticking on their final chance to escape. Earth strikes back. The massive Krelax warship outside the hangar loomed like a harbinger of doom, its glowing weapon systems charging with lethal energy. Inside the docking bay, chaos erupted as prisoners scrambled for cover. The air was thick with tension, and every second felt like an eternity. Lily clenched her blaster tightly, her heart pounding as she stood beside Eva. What do we do now? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Eva's jaw tightened as she studied the situation. We fight, she said, her voice cold and determined. She activated her comm link. Team 2, Detonate the charges now. Deep within the Krelax warship, explosives planted by Eva's second team ignited with a deafening roar. The ship shuddered violently as its power core was engulfed in flames. Sections of the vessel lost power, lights flickering and systems failing. The Krelax soldiers stumbled as the ground beneath them shook. On the bridge of the enemy warship, the Krelax commander snarled in rage. "What is happening?" "Massive damage to our core systems," a subordinate reported. "The intruders have sabotaged the ship." The commander slammed a clawed fist onto the control panel. "Destroy them. No survivors." In the docking bay, the prisoners cheered as the explosions rocked the ship. Their captors were momentarily thrown into disarray, and Eva seized the opportunity. "Move now," she shouted, signaling her team and the prisoners to board the Phantom Wing and other small craft in the hangar. Lily helped Tuvor rally the prisoners, her voice rising above the chaos. "Stay together. Get to the ships. We can do this." As they boarded, the Krelax warship outside began to fire, its energy beams lighting up the hangar. The Phantom Wing's shields absorbed the first volley, but the ship couldn't hold out forever. "Shields are at 50%, Marcus reported from the pilot's seat. "We need to take off now." Eva gritted her teeth. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The battle intensified as Krelax reinforcements flooded the hangar. The prisoners, armed with stolen weapons, fought back fiercely, their desperation fueling their courage. Lily and Tuvor stood side by side, taking down enemy soldiers with precision. Suddenly, a group of Krelax soldiers unleashed a barrage of energy fire at the Phantom Wing, targeting its engines. Eva's heart sank as the ship shuddered under the assault. "We're not going to make it," Marcus shouted. Eva's mind raced. They needed a distraction, something to buy them time. "Tuvor," Lily said suddenly, her voice urgent. "Can we override the hangar doors? If we can open them, the vacuum of space will do the rest." Tovor's eyes widened. "That'll kill anyone still in the hangar." Lily's gaze was unyielding. "If we don't, none of us will survive." Tuvor hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I'll need cover." While Tuvor worked to override the controls, Eva's team and the prisoners held the line. The Krelax soldiers pressed forward, their numbers seemingly endless. Lily's blaster grew hot in her hands as she fired relentlessly, refusing to give ground. Finally, Tuvor shouted, "I've got it." The hangar doors began to creak open, revealing the cold expanse of space beyond. The sudden decompression was immediate and violent. Krelax soldiers were pulled into the void, their screams silenced as they vanished into the darkness. The prisoners clung to whatever they could as the air was sucked from the room. "Engage emergency seals," Eva ordered, and the Phantom Wing systems activated, creating a protective force field around the ship's entry points. As the chaos subsided, the hangar fell eerily silent. The remaining Krelax forces had been wiped out, and the path to escape was clear. Eva turned to her team. "Get us out of here." The Phantom Wing powered up, its engines roaring to life. The ship lifted off, carrying Lily, Eva, Tuvor, and the surviving prisoners away from the Krelax warship. Just as they thought they were safe, an alarm blared on the Phantom Wing. "Incoming transmission," Marcus reported. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the Krelax commander. His face was twisted with fury. "You think you've won. You've only delayed the inevitable. Earth will burn." Eva's eyes narrowed. "Not if we burn you first." The camera panned to a massive fleet of Krelax ships approaching in the distance. The odds had shifted again, and the battle was far from over. The turning point. The Phantom Wing raced through the dark void of space, its engines roaring at full power. Behind it, the wreckage of the Krelax warship floated lifeless, but ahead loomed a more significant threat, a fleet of Krelax ships closing in like a pack of wolves. Eva stood in the command center, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the incoming enemy fleet. "How long until they intercept us?" she asked sharply. Marcus's fingers flew over the controls. 5 minutes at most. Their ships are faster and heavily armed. Lily, standing nearby, clenched her fists. We can't outrun them, can we? Eva shook her head grimly. Not in this state. Our shields are barely holding, and the engines won't survive a prolonged chase. Her mind worked furiously, searching for a solution. Tover, seated at a console, leaned forward. There might be a way. The Krelax fleet isn't expecting a counterattack, not after what we just pulled off. Eva turned to him, her expression skeptical. A counterattack? With what? Tover gestured to the data he had stolen from the Krelax warship. During my time as a prisoner, I learned about their fleet's central command system. If we can infiltrate one of their lead ships, we could sabotage their entire formation. It would create chaos, buy us time. Lily frowned. You're talking about boarding an enemy ship, while being hunted by an entire fleet. Tover's gaze didn't waver. Do you have a better plan? The ship fell silent as Eva considered the risk. Finally, she nodded. We'll make it work. Marcus, find the closest lead ship in their formation. Tover, prepare the data for transfer. Lily. Eva glanced at her sister, her expression softening. I need you to lead the prisoners. Keep them safe. Lily's eyes widened. What about you? Eva placed a hand on her shoulder. I'll lead the infiltration team. This is what I'm trained for. No, Lily said firmly, stepping forward. You've done enough for me. I'm coming with you. Eva hesitated, but the determination in Lily's eyes was unyielding. Finally, she relented. All right, but you follow my lead. Understood. Understood, Lily said, her voice steady. The Phantom Wing changed course, heading straight for the lead Krelax ship. The tension on board was palpable as the crew prepared for the daring maneuver. Marcus piloted the ship with expert precision, using the debris from the earlier battle to mask their approach. Cloaking engaged, he reported. They haven't detected us yet. Eva assembled her infiltration team, which included Tover, Lily, and a handful of skilled soldiers. They armed themselves with energy rifles and EMP grenades, each weapon carefully calibrated to disrupt Krelax technology. Once we're on board, we'll head straight for their command center, Eva instructed. Our goal is to disable their fleet coordination. Without it, they'll be in disarray. And if we get caught? One soldier asked. Eva's expression hardened. Then we fight our way out. The Phantom Wing docked silently with the Krelax lead ship, its cloaking field holding steady. The infiltration team moved quickly, cutting through the airlock and stepping into the cold, metallic corridors of the enemy vessel. The ship's interior was eerily quiet, the hum of its systems the only sound. Tover led the way, his knowledge of Krelax architecture guiding them toward the command center. We don't have much time, he whispered. Their sensors will pick up the breach soon. As the team neared the command center, alarms suddenly blared. Red lights illuminated the corridor, and the sound of approaching Krelax soldiers echoed through the halls. They found us. Marcus's voice crackled through Eva's comm. They're mobilizing reinforcements. You need to move fast. Eva nodded, signaling her team to press forward. They encountered their first wave of resistance, Krelax soldiers armed with energy rifles. A fierce firefight broke out, the corridor flashing with bursts of light as both sides exchanged fire. Lily crouched behind cover, her hands shaking slightly as she fired at the enemy. Tover stayed close, using his technical skills to disable security systems and reroute enemy forces. Keep moving, Eva shouted, leading the charge. The team finally breached the command center, a vast room filled with holographic displays and control panels. The Krelax commander stood at the center, his expression a mix of shock and fury. Intruders, kill them, he roared. The room erupted into chaos as the team engaged the Krelax guards. Lily and Eva worked together seamlessly, covering each other as they advanced toward the central console. Tover reached the console first, plugging in the stolen data. I need 30 seconds, he shouted, frantically working to override the system. Eva and Lily held the line, their blasters firing relentlessly. The Krelax commander charged toward them, his claws gleaming, but Eva intercepted him, engaging in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Tovar's voice rang out. "It's done. The fleet's systems are offline." Suddenly, the lights in the command center flickered, and the holographic displays went dark. Across the Krelax fleet, ships lost communication with each other, their formations breaking apart in confusion. Eva turned to her team. "Fall back. We're done here." As the team raced back to the Phantom Wing, the Krelax commander, battered but alive, activated a hidden console. "You think this is over?" he snarled. "You've only unleashed our true wrath." A massive explosion rocked the Krelax ship as its self-destruct sequence began, leaving Eva, Lily, and their team with mere moments to escape. The Shadow's revenge. The Phantom Wing roared out of the Krelax lead ship just as the massive vessel began to implode. The self-destruct sequence sent ripples of energy through the surrounding space, scattering debris and temporarily blinding sensors. Eva, Lily, and the team barely made it back on board in time, their breaths heavy with relief and exhaustion. "Status report." Eva barked as the ship's hatch sealed behind them. Marcus's voice came through the comm, strained but focused. "We're clear of the blast radius, but the fleet is regrouping. They're still disorganized from the sabotage, but it won't last long." Eva nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Then we hit them before they can recover." Lily stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "What's the plan?" "We can't take them all head-on." Eva gestured to Tovar, who was already at a console, analyzing the chaos. "Tovar, do we have control of their systems?" Tovar nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. "Not completely, but I've rerouted their communications. They'll be blind for at least another 10 minutes. Eva's gaze hardened. "That's all we need. Marcus, plot a course toward their fleet's central carrier. If we take it out, the rest will scatter." As the Phantom Wing hurtled toward the enemy carrier, the tension aboard the ship was palpable. The prisoners, now armed and determined, prepared themselves for the final confrontation. Lily moved through the crowd, offering words of encouragement and rallying their spirits. "We've come this far," she said, her voice carrying over the low hum of the engines. "They think they can break us, but we've already shown them what humans and allies can do when we fight together. This ends now." The crowd erupted into cheers, their fear replaced by defiance. The Phantom Wing dropped out of its cloaked approach, appearing directly in front of the Krelax carrier. Eva's voice rang out over the comm system. "Target their command deck. Fire everything we've got." The ship's weapons blazed to life, launching a barrage of energy blasts and missiles at the carrier. The Krelax, still struggling to reorganize, were caught off guard. Their defensive systems faltered as explosions rippled across the massive ship's hull. Inside the carrier, the Krelax commander snarled in rage. "Return fire. Destroy that ship." The carrier's weapons powered up, unleashing a volley of plasma beams. The Phantom Wing shuddered under the impact, its shields flickering dangerously. "Shields at 30%. Marcus shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Eva gritted her teeth. "Divert power to the forward shields and keep firing. We're not backing down." As the battle raged, Lily joined Eva on the bridge, her expression grim. "We can't win this with firepower alone," she said. "What about the explosives we recovered from the lead ship?" Eva's eyes widened as the idea clicked. "A boarding assault. We plant the charges inside their carrier and take it out from the core." Lily nodded. "It's risky, but it's our best shot." Eva turned to Marcus. "Keep the Phantom Wing in firing position as long as possible. Lily, Tovar, and I will lead the boarding team." The team launched in a small assault shuttle, weaving through the chaos of battle. They docked with the carrier, breaching its hull and entering the labyrinthine corridors. The ship was in disarray, with Krelax soldiers scrambling to respond to the Phantom Wing's relentless attack. "Split up," Eva ordered. "Plant charges at key structural points. Regroup at the shuttle in 10 minutes." Lily and Tover moved quickly, navigating the carrier's interior and placing explosives in critical areas. They encountered resistance, but their determination drove them forward. As the final charges were set, Tover hesitated. "You go ahead," he said, his voice heavy. "I'll make sure these detonators stay active." Lily's eyes widened. "Tover? No. It's the only way." Tover interrupted, a sad smile on his face. "You've shown me something worth fighting for. Now go." Lily reluctantly ran back to the shuttle, her heart aching with loss. She joined Eva and the others as the ship powered up and sped away from the carrier. From the safety of the Phantom Wing, they watched as the charges detonated. The Krelax carrier erupted in a blinding explosion, its wreckage scattering through space. The remaining Krelax ships, leaderless and disorganized, fled the battlefield. Cheers erupted aboard the Phantom Wing, but Lily remained silent, her thoughts with Tover. Eva placed a hand on her shoulder. "He knew what he was doing, and because of him, we've won." The story concludes with the surviving prisoners returning to Earth, where they are hailed as heroes. Humanity sends a clear message to the galaxy: they will not be victims. The Krelax, once feared as an unstoppable force, are now on the defensive. Lily, standing under the stars once more, vows to honor Tover's sacrifice. "We're stronger together," she whispers, the light of Earth's rebirth shining in her eyes.